Welcome to the online course on effective communication skills, Module 1. Today's topic is basic communication process. Now let us see a little intro on what is this communication process. Communication is a structured process involving multiple steps to ensure effective message delivery. It consists of several key elements working together for successful interactions. Understanding these elements helps us to communicate clearly in personal and professional settings. Now the next thing that comes to our mind is what are the elements of communication in this process? First is, as you see in the diagram, the first is the sender. Then the sender encodes the message, and the message is the third, which is channelized through a proper channel. And then the receiver, the other end, receives the message, decodes the message, and then gives the feedback. So this is a complete cycle of the process of communication. Now let us deal with each element in detail. The first one, as we saw in the earlier diagram, the sender, the origin of communication. The sender is a source of information and message. A person, a group, or an organization. Their role is to encode the message either through thoughts, words, gestures, or symbols. The success of a communication depends on how well the sender formulates the message. For instance, a teacher explaining a concept, the teacher is a sender there who is explaining the concept. A manager giving instructions, so manager becomes the sender. Now, the second element in this process is the encoding process. Now, encoding means turning thoughts into message. Encoding is a process of converting ideas into words, images, or actions. The sender must use language and symbols that the receiver can understand. A poor encoding leads to miscommunication or a confusion. For example, using simple language while speaking to a child. Another instance, using technical terms in a business setting. The next in the process of this communication is the message. Message really plays a vital role in the process of communication. Message is that's why is the core of communication. The message is the actual content being communicated. It can be verbal, either spoken or written, non-verbal, which is body language, or symbols, images, and signs. Now, clarity and structure are essential for the message to be understood correctly. For example, a doctor is explaining a diagnosis where he explains it to the nurse. The message should be conveyed properly. Okay, a text message or a traffic sign which gives a proper indication. Now, after the message, how the message is channelized, that is the next stage. So, channel is the medium of communication. The channel is a pathway through which the message is sent. It can be face-to-face conversation, a phone call, email, social media, or a written document. Choosing the right channel impacts the effectiveness of communication. For example, using an email for a formal communication, a video call for a remote meeting. Now, after the message is sent through a proper channel, who is the other side who receives it is the receiver. Okay, the target of the message. The receiver is the person or a group who interprets the message. Their background, language, and experience affects the understanding of the message which is sent by the sender. Active listening is crucial for accurate message reception. For example, a student listening to a lecture, an employee reading an email from the boss. So all these are the ones who receive the message. Now, once the receiver receives the message, the process of decoding starts. So decoding is understanding the message which is received by the receiver. Decoding is a process where the receiver interprets the sender's message. The receiver's language skills, knowledge, and emotions impact on the process of decoding the message. Misinterpretation can happen if the message is unclear. For example, a doctor is explaining a prescription to a patient who misunderstood the dosage of the medicine. Then it may lead to a total disaster. Now, after decoding, where the receiver has decoded the message, the receiver gives the feedback of the message, which means ensuring the understanding the message. Now, feedback is the receiver's response to the message, if it, confirming if it was understood correctly. It helps the sender correct mistakes and improve the communication. The way the feedback is given, the sender also takes it and improves his style of sending the message. Feedback can be verbal, asking a question, or a non-verbal, nodding, or confused, or putting all type of gestures if he doesn't understand the message. For example, a student raising a hand to ask for a clarification in a classroom, a manager nodding to an agreement. Now, in this whole process of communication, noise plays a very important role. Noise becomes the barrier to communication. Now, noise is any disturbance or distraction that affects the message clarity. It can be physical, that is background noise, or psychological, that is the stress of the receiver or the sender also, or technical, maybe a bad phone call where the receiver or the sender, whatever the sender is trying to explain, the receiver may not understand it properly because of poor connection. Minimizing noise improves communication effectiveness. For example, a bad microphone in a virtual meeting, a loud TV during a conversation. Now, in this process of communication, as we saw, the noise plays an important role. The next important thing that also plays an important role is the context. Now, the context is the setting of communication. Context refers to the environment where communication happens. It may include physical context, that is classroom or office, social context, that is formal or informal, cultural context, the different traditions the receiver and the sender are actually belong to. The same message may be understood differently in different context, right? An example, speaking formally in a meeting versus casually with friends. Now, this context also has a lot of influence in the process of communication. How does context affect communication? Now, let's see point by point. It influences the tone, style, and formality of communication. It affects the choice of words. It affects nonverbal cues. It affects how the message is interpreted. Now, why is context important in communication? It helps to ensure that messages are clear and well connected. It helps people understand the intent of the message. It helps people to understand the perspective of the speaker. Now, as we have seen the different ways of how the communication process goes on, let us see a difference between formal and informal communication. In a formal communication, official channels like meeting records, emails go through in a very formal way. The language is also very polished, very dignified, and the process of communication is also quite respectful. And in informal communication, it is very casual, spontaneous, like chats, gestures, social media, just like talking to friends. Like both play an important role in personal and professional life. Example, a business email versus a WhatsApp chat, right? Okay. Now, coming to the next type of communication, that is one-way communication versus two-way communication. A one-way communication is the sender shares information without expecting a response. For example, you can see the image there. A news reader reading a message, reading the news in a telecast, in a broadcast, where it is just a one-way communication. A two-way communication is both sender and receiver interacts, exchange ideas, converse with each other, give feedback to each other. So that is a two-way communication. So a lecture is a one-way communication where teacher only speaks in a classroom. A two-way communication is where students are also involved in an interactive session. A discussion takes place, role plays takes place, and it is where the teacher and the students are involved in a discussion. So that is a two-way communication. Now let us see an important aspect of this basic communication process is how important is active listening in the whole process of this communication. Communication is not just about speaking. Listening is equally important. The way you listen, how well you listen, also matters how well you give the feedback back to the sender. Active listening involves focusing, avoiding distractions, and responding appropriately. Helps in better understanding and problem solving. For example, a therapist listens carefully to a patient to provide the right advice. Okay, so active listening plays an important role in how well you receive the message and how well you give the feedback back to the sender, where the communication process takes place smoothly. Now, in conclusion, the power of effective communication is the basic communication process involves multiple elements working together. Effective communication ensures clear understanding, reducing conflicts, and improves relationships. Practicing good communication skills leads to succeed in personal and professional life. For example, you can see there in the picture a great leader like Martin Luther King Jr. used strong communication skills to inspire millions and millions of people through his speech. So, we have seen in this lecture on basic communication process. We will see in the next lecture on the 7 C's of effective communication. Thank you.